Hello, this is the first of a series of videos where I'm going to go through each of the movements of the Blue Pearl Oratorio and talk a bit about my intentions for the movement, about the text, and about the music and special features of the music. So I'm going to start with the introductory movement, which is called Requiem Nunc, which is Latin, of course, for rest now or peace now. So I definitely had the intention to start the piece with one foot, as it were, in the world of the traditional oratorio, the Requiem masses particularly. So the opening music sounds very much like, is reminiscent of the opening of Fauré's Requiem. And the choir sing Requiem Aeternam, which means eternal rest, which is the words, those are the words from the beginning of a traditional requiem setting. But then instead of singing Requiem Aeternam Dona Eis Domine, which would be the traditional words, which means grant them eternal rest, Lord, which is speaking to the dead and asking that they have eternal peace, eternal rest. Instead of that, it says Requiem Aeternam hic et nunc, here and now. So within just a few bars, the text departs radically from that traditional Requiem Mass. And this piece is about, Blue Pearl is about, the spiritual aspect of it is a non-dual spirituality, which is to say that eternity and eternal peace is to be found here and now, on the earth, while we're alive. And that's what the essence of the spiritual text in this piece. That's called a non-dual spirituality because the transcendent, namely spirit or whatever you like to call it or think of it as well as being utterly transcendent, is also utterly immanent. So in Buddhist terms, in the famous Heart Sutra, that's the text that says form and emptiness are one and the same. So I'm not going to go into that in great depth right now, but that's one of the themes of the whole piece, that spiritual transcendence is to be found here and now. And it's actually always already occurring. And we're just under an illusion. We live our lives in conventional way of living, and in conventional knowledge, we live our lives in an illusion that we're separate from the divine, from spirit. And our task is, as it were, to wipe away the mist of that illusion and to experience reality as it actually is. So that's the right at the beginning. That comes in the text for this piece, and then the choir go into a fugue, a short fugue, and they sing, "Only now can you hear each note we sing." Only now, now with sort of capital N-O-W. So this is saying, as I just mentioned, that eternity is now. We only ever experience the present moment. So this is a bit about time in eternity. So although the music moves through time, each note that the audience hears, each note that the choir sings, is sung in the present moment, is sung now. And that's an extraordinary sort of paradox, that we have this experience of a flow of time, and yet, obviously, we can only experience anything in the present moment. So that's an extraordinary thing. And all time is now. The soprano comes in and she says, music is a language. It only makes sense in time. But in eternity, all time is now. There's more to be said about time and eternity, obviously, but that's a quick introduction. So then the music, having had this one foot in the traditional classical world with a classical introduction. Oh, I forgot to mention, at the end of the very slow introduction, we go into 5/4 time and we hear contrary motion scale. La 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 la, and that's mirrored with the ascending scale, la 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 la, and so on. So we have this symmetry of contrary motion scales. That also is representing a non-dual spirituality in the musical symbolism. So that the non-dual spirituality and integral spirituality is a marriage of transcendence and immanence. Okay, so that's another representation of non-duality. Then we hear the cymbal play this rhythm, Honsho Myoshu, obviously without the words. So we hear that rhythm, dum dum, da dum dum, on the cymbal alone, and we'll understand what that symbolizes when we hear the death movement and we hear the choir sing Honsho Myoshu, which is Japanese from Zen, Japanese Buddhism, and again is a phrase that says, if we sit to meditate in contemplative practice, we don't sit to attain something, we sit to express our always already awakened nature. It's just an illusion that we're not already awakened, that we're not already, in Buddhist terms, in Buddha nature. So there's a little brief foretastes of what's to come in terms of the death movement and these contrary motion scales which feature throughout the piece, representing a non-dual spirituality where spirit is both transcendent and immanent. So then, as I said, the choir goes into this fugue and the soprano comes in about time, and then a sudden change and the music goes into a sort of big band jazz feel, and the tenor has a solo where the lyric starts off, "What do you have for breakfast? Can you eat it now?" And again, this is a reference to time. Imagine breakfast tomorrow. Can you eat it now? So this is saying the past is just a memory. That's how the text goes on. The past is just a memory, a thought now. The future is just imagination, just another thought now. Now. So this is this very simple, in a way, understanding that the past is, which we think of as something behind us, is actually a present experience. It's memory. And the future, which we think of as somehow in front of us, is also a present experience. It's a thought, an imagined experience, a thought. So the past and the future all actually happen now in the mind, created by the mind, by thinking. And then the fugue comes back, synthesized, integrated with the jazz feel now, and the text says, "As you listen, can you hear a hearer separate from the sound? As you look, can you see a seer separate from the seen? Or a knower? When you're thinking, is there a thinker separate from the thought? Or a knower separate from the known?" Those are all the fugue entries. And then the whole choir together sing, "The feeling of being a separate subject, somewhere in here, you'll find it's only an illusion. Subject and object, one." So, again, this is very, very succinct, very brief summary of this non-dual spiritual understanding that subject and object are one. We have this illusion of being a subject, I in here, looking at the world out there, but actually when we come to examine it really carefully, there is no I, no separate I that is hearing. There is simply hearing. We can't find a seer who is seeing. We can't find a thinker who is thinking. Thoughts just arise. So that's a non-dual spirit. All of those can be practiced as non-dual spiritual practices. and the essence of it is there is no personal I which is somehow separate from the universe, looking out at the universe. The experience we're actually having is the experience of the universe experiencing itself, knowing itself. And the whole of evolution has been a process of growing consciousness on the part of the cosmos. And it's always funny speaking like this, because as I'm saying that, of course, I become aware that I am the cosmos speaking. Yes, there's Steve. You know, I pay my taxes. I'm married. My wife knows that she's married to Steve. And yet at the same time, Steve is the cosmos speaking. And we're going to come on to evolution. There's a continuity right before Steve was conceived as a coming together of egg and sperm. There's this continuity going all the way back to the Big Bang. I am, right now, the cosmos evolved over billions of years now, always now, to a point where the cosmos is aware of itself, knows itself, and you also, listening, exactly the same. This is the cosmos speaking to the cosmos. So, there's a bit more in there's a lot in this first introductory movement. The choir then have an a cappella section, and they sing, "The void is what you cannot see, no matter how you stare, when you're looking for a self that is not there." The void with a capital V. This is really from a Buddhist or a Vedanta, a Buddhist context. Just as a knife can't cut itself, however hard it may try, so the seer, capital S, so the seer can't see itself, the invisible, eternal, here and now I. So again, it's all talking about the same thing. The self with the capital S can never be known. That's it's also known as the absolute subject. I think that's in Sufism. It has many names. The self with a capital S, but it can never be known, because if it was known, it would be an object, not the subject. Anything that can be known is an object. So the seer can never see itself. It just it is the space, the consciousness in which experience arises, objects arise, be they internal, so to speak, thought or body experiences, or, so to speak, external sights and sounds and so on. The choir then sing, "A path with no creed, no dogma, just experiences to try." Just experiments to try. No creed, no dogma, just experiments to try, just maps and reality, maps and maps of maps. Because the integral model, Ken Wilber's integral model, is a map of maps. It's a meta map. Just maps and maps of maps and reality to see with your own eyes. Eyes with a capital E, because that's the eye of flesh, the eye of mind, and the eye of spirit. So this fantastic idea from Ken Wilber, this notion of when we have this idea of the spectrum of consciousness, which we'll come on to with the following movements in anamnesis, that brings with it the understanding that different levels of consciousness reveal different world spaces. So one can see things with the eye of spirit, or one can see things with the eye of mind that can simply never be experienced with the eye of flesh, by definition. And similarly, one can experience things with the eye of spirit through meditation, contemplative practice, that one cannot experience through the mind, through thinking. So it takes you onto a different level of reality. Reality is not all homogeneous, it's layered. And the layers are different levels of consciousness. So that's again a very pithy, very brief sort of statement about an integral, non-dual spiritual path. It has its roots in a rational outlook, whereby one can experiment with one's own consciousness through meditation, through many practices that have been passed down through myriad generations. These and they and I can't remember the word in I think it's in Sanskrit, but the translation is skillful means. Meditation is seen as a skillful means to understand the mind, the nature of the mind. And Ken Wilber has brought us this idea of broad science and narrow science. So the science that we normally think of is now narrow science, which deals with the physical world or the biological world out there, or in here in the case of the physics and biology. But broad science includes the world, the subjective world, my subjective experience. I can explore scientifically. You know, that's a huge, big step that Wilber has made. That meditation and contemplative prayer, these things are scientific experiments in the sense that there's an injunction which many other people have performed the same experiment, and you can compare the results that you get in terms of your internal subjective experience with other people's subjective experience, and there are results that are common to have been well established down generations of practitioners. Okay, and then this movement ends with a recap of Requiem aeternam hic et nunc, here and now. Now. So that's the introductory movement. There's a lot in it in terms of the text, and the music moves from classical into this big band jazz, classical with a little fugue into big band jazz. So the music is also saying, there's lots here in this piece. There's lots coming, lots of different things, and it's sort of shaking up. The music is the switch to the jazz is. It was an intuitive thing when I wrote it. It wasn't a planned idea. It just suddenly sprang into my mind. But I love it. It starts all traditional and like a bit like Fauré Requiem, and then suddenly, and a fugue, something so iconic from classical music, a little fugue, and then suddenly this big band jazz. So suddenly it just shakes the whole thing up. This is something new. This piece is something new in terms of the music and the way structures are used, and this piece is very new, as far as I understand, in terms of the text, a spiritual text. And please, if you're listening to this and you know of other pieces, other sacred choral works that use non-dual texts, spiritual texts, or any texts that are very different from the traditional requiems, please get in touch with me. My email is steve@stevebanks.info, and you can listen to the demo recording of this movement and all the other movements on my website, stevebanks.info. And please do sign up there for the email list on the contact page to get updates about the world premiere of Blue Jewel, which is going to be on the 14th of May 2022.